Welcome to Green Nothing Productions. I am a left-wing autistic person who is against the alt-right and hates racism. Welcome to my random rambly vlog. Greetings, various people across grand spectrums of time and the multiverse. My name is Alexander Gordon Jahans, and I have just literally realised that I am still wearing my pajamas. It's been kind of a long day. Kind of a long, weird day, because sort of yesterday, well, the day before yesterday, I stayed up late because I didn't think I had anything to worry about. I didn't think I had any reason not to. So I stayed up late, listening to podcasts and playing Skyrim. And then I got woken up early so I could go to counselling, achieved pretty much fuck all, and had a nap, woke up at 9 PM, played some more Skyrim, achieved pretty much fuck all, went to bed at about 6 AM, went back to bed, and today I was like, finally, I shall do things, because I finally have energy for things, and stuff, and things. Nope. Didn't fucking do anything. I meant to fucking clean my room. Didn't have the fucking energy because of course I am not alone in this house. And there are other people in this house who like to do things. And they call upon my services. So I was taken away to do a thing, and fortunately I got basically next week's worth of food, so that means yay, stay alive for another week. But it also means that I didn't get done what I wanted to do today, because I was going to have a nice productive day of saying, okay, I'll tidy my room and then I'll record a Let's Play episode, and I will be getting back into the Let's Playing of the things, and then I can do a Let's Play or a Let's Try of depth, and I can show off swimming as a shark, because swimming as a shark would be so very awesome, and then that didn't happen, because instead I was out in the sweltering heat with my mother, who, bless her, she's a lovely woman, but my mother is kind of the complete opposite of me. Like, she's someone who has voted UKIP in the past and has said that she would have voted Tory in the last general election were it not for the fact that she was on holiday and missed it. This is a woman who has tried to steal from me in the past. And this is a woman who also will have a habit of telling her entire life story to random fucking strangers. And then will complain to me saying, why do you tell people on the internet your entire life story? And this is the woman who will tell her entire life story to the fucking baker. just go, hello, I've just met you, I'm going to say every fucking thing that ever fucking happened in our lives. So as someone who is awkward, because, you know, autism, that's not fun, and particularly, I am someone who bears grudges. Basically, I am someone who remembers. Particularly bad things. I remember bad things with quite good clarity. So the fact that the day ended where it's like, okay, we got the things have been gotten, food, yay! And it's like, okay, we will get the frozen stuff last, because it is a fucking heat wave and frozen stuff could go off. So I go, I get the frozen food, I come back, sort of like, you know, I mean, I'm quite a big man, but just, you know, like, there was a lot of stuff. Because Asda is not Sainsbury's. I am used to Sainsbury's. I know exactly what I fucking want from Sainsbury's. It's cheap, it's easy, it's fucking healthy, and it works. But in Asda, it's like, timings, temperature, I don't fucking know. So, that's gonna be a fun week of miserable fucking food. But I got back, and I was like, okay, I've got the frozen food, let's go, quickly, Tells! And my mother just goes, yeah, but I need passport photos for travelling, so see you! So not good. Not good at all. Not good at all. So I can't do a video for you guys today. I can't do the videos that I intended to do. And there's I'm not looking at the fucking politics. I mean, there isn't really much politically going on anyway. It's all just continuations of shit that is going on. Oh my god. By the way, it is the middle of a heat wave, but also there's just been a thunderstorm. So I've had to close the windows. So I'm kind of ever so slightly baking and boiling as I've got 2 computers, 4 external hard drives. I've got a fucking light in my eyes, and I've got 2 great big monitors. So yeah, kind of a lot of things. God, I kind of ever so slightly boiling and basting a little here. Yes. Hashtag based Alex. B-A-S-T. Yes. This, incidentally, is a form of exercise that I have learnt through basically leveling up my actually no, that's what I'll have to show you that in a Skyrim Let's Play thing at some point. But basically, there is a there is a thing, a mod that I've got that adds a perk potion, a very expensive perk potion, and also in Skyrim there are a lot of things that you can steal or procure to sell, and often people don't have the money for this. So what I will do is what I did the day before last sleep. Well, I'll put it that way, because it gets confusing when you sleep at odd times. Basically, before last sleep, I just would buy a perk potion, and then I would sell all the crap from my inventory, and I would do so only with my left hand on the keyboard. And then I would just have my right holding up a 5 kilogram weight just in the air whilst I was working. Suppose really my right hand doesn't need to get any more solo strength. There we are. So the thing that I wanted to talk about. This is probably going to be a long video because this is the thing that I get asked occasionally of just like, can you tell us more about the Tharshnuk and the fiction and the things and the context? And so this is me. I'm now going to do story time. I am going to explain to you the grand backstory of the multiverse. Okay. I mean, I'm going to summarize. I'm going to gloss over things. I'm not going to include absolutely everything. Just the important points that kind of get us up to the start of Arc 2. Okay? I mean, some of this is in stories that haven't actually been written yet. Some of this is in stories that have been written but aren't in the public domain. But anyway, without further ado, this is what has happened. So, the multiverse. What is the multiverse? Basically, in the beginning, before the universe, before any universe, there was nothing. complete nothing, and thus there was no logic. There was nothing to say that nothing means nothing. And so nothing could be infinite, eternal, and green. And it was. And within this grand, infinite, eternal, green nothingness, there also happened the chance creation and the chance happening of logic. And the more logic appeared, the more it increased the chances of it appearing again, and chances of it being more logical and more logical and more logical. And as the logic evolved, it created these beings known as elder gods. And the elder gods are basically the proto-universes. These were beings of great power because these were formed before logic created the physics that would limit it. Essentially, it's like when you create a D&D game and you're just thinking up characters and stuff, and you don't really know how the rules work yet. So everything's a little OP. You know, this is kind of the early alpha game stuff when everything's a bit overpowered. And so there was created the great septarchy. You had the Farshnuk, the trickster god, or the shepherd, or the reaper. Then you had the Bamkirsh, and the Bamkirsh is known as the toy maker, because the Bamkirsh is cold, very cold and manipulative, and the Bamkirsh will do anything to achieve their ends. And the reason why I'm being careful about pronouns here is that the Farshnuk will basically 9 times out of 10 be a man, because the Farshnuk actually I'll go into that later, because yes, there's going to be a lot of talk about the Farshnuk. But suffice to say, it's quite important to the Farshnuk's lore that he's basically generally 90% of the time a man, whereas the Bamkirsh is just the Bamkirsh's soul, or the logic that represents the Bamkirsh, doesn't give a shit. It uses whatever is available. It uses the tools to hand. So if the Bamkirsh incarnates as a woman, the Bamkirsh doesn't give a shit. It's just gonna keep doing what it needs to do. And so the Bamkirsh is the toy maker. It's kind of, and the Bamkirsh is typically the Farshnuk sort of rival and nemesis and, you know, best friend and things, you know. Because the Bamkirsh and the Farshnuk, they kind of work in similar ways, but the Farshnuk genuinely cares about the sheep that he's being slaughtered, that he's slaughtering. Whereas the Bamkirsh doesn't care. The Bamkirsh might actually be nicer, might actually be more kind, more sympathetic, more compassionate. But the Bamkirsh doesn't care. The Bamkirsh just sees it as a mean to an end, as just like, well, people are as playthings to the gods. Then there is Jahfaxi Kulamancy, and Jahfaxi Kulamancy is kind of, she's the sort of the more compassionate, typically female elder god who is just a bit exasperated from having to try and, you know, keep all these various gods in line. And then there is then there is Spring Hill Jack. And Spring Hill Jack is basically just lust and anger and rage and sadism, and basically as close to pure monstrous as possible as you can get. And then there is Pacifus Subis, who is kind of basically the airy-fairy elder god that nobody really knows much about because they don't get involved in the affairs of mortals. And they really don't care much, to be honest. They just things, there's things and stuff, and I don't care. I don't care what's going on. What are you talking about? Why would I care about that? No, I don't care about that at all. And then I think I'm now going back to check on the older pieces of fiction that I have written, because there is a story where I sort of outline the different elder gods, and I'm kind of trying to find it now because it would be nice to because there is essentially a sixth elder god who is kind of the center of the sort of paradigm. Come on, where is it? Go to documents. Yes, fascinating stuff. This I know. I'm dreadfully sorry. I don't even know what it's bloody called. Tell you what, I'm going to pause and find it because editing. Ah yes, I have found it. It is in a story that I wrote but never actually published, called the Pan Multiverse Good Time Association. And this is where we get the sort of the center one, who is Viorum Castiftan, a being that straddles the line. As a man, Viorum is destructive, indulgent, chaotic, anti-authority whilst being authority. As a woman, Viorum is passive, moral, restrained, respectful of authority, whilst humbly absolving herself of it. Viorum Castiftan essentially is it's kind of murky the way that things are, but essentially with the way the septarchy works is that you have essentially the male gits on the sort of the right of the spectrum, who are, like Spring-Heeled Jack is just completely remorseless, just no way to redeem that character. Then there's the Bamkirsch, who is a dick, who utterly uses people and is generally monstrous, but is also nice about it. Like, the Bamkirsch will do horrible things, but will go about doing them in ways that mean that there is as less suffering as can happen. And then you've got the Farshanuk, who is very fallible, prone to anger, does horrible, dreadful things, lustful, sadistic, and yet at the same time genuinely cares for and has compassion for people. And then you've got Vuram Kaz-Tiftan kind of in the middle, being the sort of the center spoke. And then you've got Jafaxi, who tries to kind of get involved in the great games that happen, but she's just a bit of a damp lettuce. Just not really that good at the game, because she's not really got the merciless streak or that is needed if you're gonna, play the great game with the Farshanuk and the Van Kirshen. And then there is Gala Placidia. And Gala Placidia is, well, first of all, the name is lifted from the 15-year-old girl who managed to essentially be Prince Regent to the western half of the Roman Empire. That's a pretty darn huge achievement. And her, essentially, Gala Placidia she is the most powerful of all the Elder Gods, because basically what happens is the Elder Gods all essentially go away. Essentially, like at one point there is what is known as the 7 great empires of the multiverse, who managed to hold together their empires long enough to essentially capture these Elder Gods, put them on trial, and execute them. And of course, the Elder Gods, so they basically all survive and come back later on as new gods, but 2 of them escape this. The first is Pacifist Subis, who basically escapes it because she's nice, and she doesn't do anything, and she basically doesn't interfere, so not much is really known about her, and they wouldn't bother to do anything because A, she's done nothing wrong, B, she's not around to do anything. Like the way you catch the Farshanuk, the way you catch Spring-Heeled Jack, the way you catch the Bam Kirsch is because they do horrible shit to people. They go into your universe and they fuck your shit up. Whereas Pacifist Subis just stands back doing her own thing and doesn't care. So she doesn't get caught. And Gala Placidia does get involved, does care, but essentially a great terror happens to her. And the way she sort of survives this dreadful ordeal is by seeding fragments of her soul across the multiverse. And that's the sort of the events told in the Venus Trap is essentially how she manages to pull herself together. But suffice to say, because of the events in the Venus Trap, Gala Placidia, through, in one aspect, this aspect of herself that was this princess regent to the western half of the Roman Empire, she manages to pull herself together and retain the power that she had as an elder god before essentially the 7 great empires took all this power away from them. And this is important to note because essentially what you have is the old times, before the 7 great empires, when the elder gods basically did whatever the fuck they liked. They didn't care. And then the 7 great empires came along and they extended out the multiverse and they said, "Oh, you fuckers!" And they took charge and they cleaned things up. And because of that, because you didn't have these powerful beings screwing things up, logic basically started evolving and causing problems. But essentially, this also allows entities to grow, organizations to grow, because essentially the reason they were known as the Seven Great Empires was because basically these were the people, these were the empires that actually managed to go out there and get rid of the Elder Gods, because until you get rid of the Elder Gods, basically anytime you try to do anything and sort of stick your head out there into the grandness of the nothingness and sort of outgrow your own universe, then the Elder Gods are just going to fuck your shit up. Okay, so this allows great, powerful organizations to develop, but it also allows great, powerful foes to develop. Okay, so it is at this point that kind of the Farshanuk becomes important, which is that in the beginnings of the multiverse, there was this sort of world known as the Mundus Turpis, or the World Fish. And the World Fish was essentially, it was a step on the road to creating the logic bubbles that would be the universes and the multiverse. And it was essentially a gigantic living fish swimming through the infinity of the multiverse with organization, with societies and organisms living on its back. And one of these sort of people was a woman named Lucy. And Lucille Dance, and she was part of this trouble that happened on the Great World Fish. And kind of, she became very important to the logic and to the evolution of logic and the sort of the logic of the multiverse through her actions there. And then basically she died. She and her children died, and there is no such thing as the afterlife in the multiverse, in the wider nothingness. There can be an afterlife within a certain universe, but there isn't within the nothingness itself, and certainly there isn't at this time, because the whole point is this is the first proto-universe that is actually somewhat resembling of a universe. And so when she dies, there is no afterlife to go to, but of course this is the multiverse. This is a world of logic. This is a world where literally the very logic of someone's being is data, is kind of literally tangible data that can exist on its own under certain conditions. And basically what happened was that by fluke of chance, as happens in the multiverse, because that's kind of how the multiverse came about in the first place, was logic just spontaneously created. Basically, the logic of her being was spontaneously recreated in the multiverse after her death, but not her children. And the Farshanuk came upon this, and at this time, before the Farshanuk came upon Lucy's soul, the Farshanuk was just kind of insane and not really sadistic, not really destroying, not really, just sort of, you know, the whole thing about the Elder Gods is that, like, you know, certainly the Farshnuk, he had watched universes rise and fall before he could even blink. Because literally the logic of him had to evolve to a certain state where he could close himself off to all this data that he was receiving. So he was massively fucked up. And then this entity, this woman's soul of Lucy, comes up to the Farshnuk and kind of freaks the fuck out because she's in this grand infinite green void and she hasn't a fucking clue what is going on. And she basically assumes it's the afterlife and freaks out that her children aren't there and just wants to die. Just actually wants to die because there is literally like nothing there. You know, I mean, if you are a grand elder god, then sure, you can do things, but if you're basically just a person left wandering the entirety of eternity forever, yeah, death would be preferable. So Farshnuk decides to grant her this death, and the way he can do that is by basically absorbing her soul. And it's when the Farshnuk absorbs her soul that he essentially becomes a man, becomes the Farshnuk that is Nobat, in the sense that when the Farshnuk absorbs Lucy's soul, her soul becomes tied to his, and he identifies with her. He becomes obsessed with the female form. He becomes completely obsessed with its beauty, its majesty, its texture. He wants to learn and consume and be with everything about that. And at the same time, this obviously, for essentially at this point, the elder god Farshnuk is essentially just a sentient gas cloud. Is basically just a sapient gas cloud of logic wafting through the nothingness. And so he sees in Lucy a form that he can use, the humanoid form that can allow him to interact with mortal worlds, but he also sees that he is not of that form. And so in what crude understanding that he has, and what that crude understanding that he can get from reading Lucy's soul, he decides that he must be a man because Lucy is something that he aspires to have, that is a form that he wants to have, but he clearly is not. It is not like Lucy in certain respects. And the Farshnuk then sort of, after this happens, the Farshnuk then goes to tell the Bam Kirsch about this, and the Bam Kirsch at that point says, alright then, okay, I guess I'll be a male as well. And they go off to essentially start pillaging the universes and become more and more and more human, until finally the grand 7 great empires chain them up and put them on trial and execute them. And obviously that's the point where everything changes. The way the way the Farshanuk and Jafaxi Kulamansi survive is that they both, well, the Farshanuk particularly, speaks with this man who is known to the who is of one of the 7 great empires. He's kind of a mysterious figure, and he's called Professor Logisti. And Professor Logisti is a man known for being kind of anti-authority, a very empathetic character, a very moral character, and someone who is essentially the most fearsome of all the empires, right? Like, this is the guy who brings down elder gods. This is the guy who puts elder gods on trial and executes them. And essentially, the Farshanuk is like, hey, look, I've been becoming more and more human. That's how you fucking caught me. Give me another chance. Give me another chance. I can learn morality. I can work with humanity. I can be its savior, because I've seen things out there. I've seen things in the multiverse. Humanity is gonna need a protector, because the 7 great empires aren't gonna last forever. Every empire falls. Have hope. Have a seed for the future. Just let my soul pass on. And so Professor Logisti kind of goes, all right. But he codes in that the Farshanuk will have morality thrust upon him if the Farshanuk finds out who he is. If the Farshanuk realizes who he is, then the Farshanuk will have this morality sort of thrust upon him. This utilitarian morality thrust upon him, and he basically won't be able to do all the horrible things that he has done. And the way the Professor Logisti hides the Farshanuk is by taking the Farshanuk soul and essentially placing it inside the body of a stillborn child so that that child can live again. So essentially you have a soul giving new life, the Farshanuk soul giving new life to another child, and that's sort of similar to how the Jafaxi, Kulamansi, and the Bamkirch and others survive. Is they all kind of find various different people who they either threaten or cajole, or just like, hey, well, you did it to them. But through various ways and means, they kind of all except for Galaplastia, who by this point has had her terrible accident and is no more, and Pasphasubis, who is way off wafting somewhere, being terribly boring and nice and not getting involved in anything. And so they're all sort of tried and executed and survive through having their souls taken to essentially revive stillborn children and live and give them a chance at new life again. And they are hidden within the universes, within other universes, and essentially that allows the sort of the new god arc to begin. Well, not the new god arc, but the new god era to begin, because the idea is that then we only see the stories where the Farshanuks amounted to something, where the elder gods amounted to something, because the souls of these elder gods are seeded effectively throughout every single universe in the multiverse. And the multiverse, I'll talk about that in a moment, but it's a thing that is dividing all the time. And universes are splitting into splitting up to meet every single possible permutation of every single possible subatomic molecule and every single decision at that moment. That is happening all the time, constantly. And that's why time travel backwards is basically impossible. Because you can do it, but you are only ever traveling back to a different multiverse, to a different universe. There is no static going backwards along the river of time, because there is a San Dimas time in the effect of every single passing moment. The multiverse itself is dividing, and universes are being destroyed, and stuff like that. So the sort of all these souls of the elder gods can be anyone in any single universe, and they therefore are everyone in every single universe. But we only hear about the ones that realize who they are or do something important with that. Okay. Like, it could be that, the Farshanuk realizes who he is, and, and the whole thing is that Lucy's soul is tied with his, so when the Farshanuk incarnates in a new body, there is a Lucy that reincarnates there as well. And so the idea is that, and so it could be that you have entire universes where the Farshanuk and Lucy realise who they are, and they just decide, fuck it, and they get married and have kids, and everything's okay. Nothing crazy happens, nothing weird happens. It's just they lived a good life at the end. And so this essentially then leads into what is known as the sort of the new god era. And the new god era is basically started off by a man known as the Great Farshanuk. And the Great Farshanuk is essentially a man who didn't realise, who didn't sort of have this moment of realisation and discovery that he was the Farshanuk. This is a man who basically, growing up with an elder god inside your head kind of screws with you a little. Partly because there's almost a sort of karmic justice in the sense that, to a certain extent, the logic of the multiverse can tell, oh, you're a fucking weirdo. There is something unnatural about you, because essentially, if you're born in a universe, if you're born in a logic bubble, you are someone who is innately logical. You think innately logical. And if you are someone who has got an elder god that was formed of primordial logic in your head, there is something distinctly illogical about you, distinctly weird about you. And so, essentially, the sort of the hosts of the reincarnated elder gods get remorselessly bullied a lot, basically. They might be gifted in other ways, but they generally don't have a pleasant childhood. And then they have nightmares. Sometimes some of them, particularly the Great Farshanuk, had nightmares of essentially the Farshanuk's past life. The Farshanuk's life as essentially a mad tyrant going around terrorizing the multiverse, once he had gotten this, humanoid form. And sort of the Great Farshnuk literally changes his name to Farsh-NUK. Just changes it by default to that, right? And then he happens upon this situation where essentially someone from another multiverse, from another multiverse, because of course there are multiverses within the grand multiverse, because the idea is that, in a true multiverse, every single piece of fiction, there is this idea of the key stream, which is this sort of dividing line that denotes the fact that for every piece of fiction within the universe, there will be a corresponding universe, within the multiverse, there will be a corresponding universe where that fiction is reality, and vice versa. And so sort of crossing the key stream is essentially breaking the fourth wall and meeting the sort of the writers or the actors or whatever. And kind of one of the sort of elder gods' gifts is they can see through the layers of the key stream, and they can they understand logic innately, and they can sort of play with the fourth wall, and they can use it to their advantage. You can maybe start to see where this was sort of planned to be a TV series at one point. But the Great Farshnuk changed his name to Farshnuk, and essentially someone from a TV series that he watched as a kid suddenly turns up in his life and he's like, okay, something is seriously fucking wrong here. And he happens to have essentially come up with the idea of the multiverse himself. He thinks that he's a sci-fi writer because he inspired by his dreams, but really he is essentially remembering things from his old life, and he's created this whole thing of, yes, I know how the multiverse works, and I know all these things, so I can do this, I can fix this, but and he ends up being the Great Farshnuk who founds the Logicios, who are this I'll go into more depth of them about them later, because they become important to later events. But basically, the Logicios, at least to start out with, are basically superpowered fanboys, superpowered superfans who steal technology, upgrade it with what they already know, and use it to make themselves even more powerful. And they use this from what knowledge the Farshnuk has and he basically creates the tools that come to typify tools of the Logicios and of sort of life within the grand multiverse. Things like the memory gun. The memory gun being a gun that has essentially bullets that shoot the bullets in sort of ammo clips, rounds that you load up into like a handgun or a machine gun or something, and basically when you pull the trigger, the bullet fires and a burst of pure logic gets blasted into your brain and forces you to and makes your brain experience a simulation within a fraction of a second. Like, it is possible to essentially make someone experience a quadrillion years within like a minute or something. And you can, if you want, load up a memory gun so that it contains so much data that someone is basically left paralyzed as they are living through an unending sort of mental simulation caused by this logic blasted into their brain. But that would be a torturous scenario, because the whole idea of the memory gun is that it shoots memories into your head, but the way it does that is by essentially allowing you to experience those memories in real time, whilst, as far as everybody else is concerned, only a moment has passed between the sort of the bullet and bursting the logic into your brain and you sort of opening your eyes and going, oh, well, oh, okay, I now know that. So that's the memory gun. Then there is the quantum oscillator. And the quantum oscillator is so called because it oscillates, i.e. vibrates, and sort of causes to rotate particles on the quantum level. Actually, what it essentially does is it vibrates these sort of strings of logic that dictate reality. And essentially, the quantum oscillator is what allows someone to reprogram reality and to change the laws of physics. And there's a Zarking sort of creates these things. There are other things that he sort of creates that I will sort of go into later as they become more relevant. But the Great Zarking, he does all of this, and he basically does all of this in response to the fact that there are these beings known as the Weresylphs. And the Weresylphs were created when the last great werewolf was dying, and her DNA could no longer mutate the DNA of men anymore, nor the DNA of wolves. And she'd been hounded to the brink of extinction, and she went to the Galapagos Islands to die, and with her last breath, as she was swallowed up by a great white shark, she bit into the heart of the great white shark. And her DNA, this great maternal will to survive, this desperate need to survive, overtook the great white shark and fused with it, so that you have the wereshark, which is a creature that will, once it has infected you, unless you can get some sort of cure, will turn you into a psychotic, sadistic, lustful, murderous monster. Essentially, the wereshark just wants to kill, to eat, to destroy, and to reproduce. And the wereshark, it defies logic and reality, because that's just a thing with the sort of the way the multiverse is that reality itself can be rewritten. The laws of physics can be rewritten at a local level to make the impossible possible. And the weresharks essentially will try to keep growing and repairing themselves so long as there is still a single valve left beating. That doesn't mean that single valve will be able to regrow an entire wereshark, but certainly if you remove one heart of a wereshark, that heart will be able to grow an entirely new wereshark. That will be a copy of the original. And of course, a wereshark, I don't know why I'm saying of course, I'm explaining this to you, but I suppose some of you might already know some of this. But the wereshark has the hearts of a shark, particularly a great white shark. It's got the heart of a wolf, and it's got the heart of a human. You know, and so you can remove any one of them in order to create a copy. And equally, you can also remove all three hearts and essentially keep the body on, you know, like an artificial pump until it grows a new heart, or you can just put in, say, some kind of, you know, compatible replacement transplant heart until the blood of the wereshark within the rest of the body manages to overtake the heart or whatever artificial heart is being used and regrow another three hearts. So it is basically entirely possible to, from one wereshark, grow 4 different clones of it very easily. And, you know, if you have the right technology under the right circumstances, you can even make an entire wereshark grow from a single still beating valve. So the weresharks are a powerful thing. And essentially the Great Varshnuk, when he sees these, he's terrified, because he thinks that somehow the weresharks, through their sheer will to survive, could weaken the safety of the multiverse. And that's why he goes on to create the Logicios. And also the terrifying thing about the weresharks is they're not just animalistic. They think, they remember the people that they used to be, but they are overtaken by lust and hunger and the need to dominate and destroy and secure their bloodline. And they can use weapons, and they can plot, and they can plan and form armies, and so the Great Varshnuk creates the Logicios and sort of begins the new era, the New God era. But the thing about the Great Varshnuk is that the Great Varshnuk isn't actually a Varshnuk, in the sense that what happened with the Great Varshnuk was the Varshnuk's host body and personality basically overrode, corroded, and killed the soul of the Varshnuk that happened to inhabit the Great Varshnuk. But because of the set of circumstances in which the Great Varshnuk found himself, and because of the memories that he had inherited through the dreams and the stuff he had figured out, he managed to more or less get himself to be the most powerful Varshnuk at that point in time. And certainly he is powerful for being the founder of the Logicios. And it is at this point that the Logicios become a dominant part of the story, and where we must introduce another very prominent part of the story. And I'm gonna have to take a drink here because, yeah, my throat's getting a little sore. But yes, now we shall talk about the Sylphs and the origins of the Sylphs. Yes. So, the Sylphs. And there was a great dying race. A great and powerful and enlightened race. But they saw something terrible that was coming, that they couldn't handle alone. And they chose to survive the only way that they felt they could. See, there are 3 ways to survive. Or at least this is a thing that is part of the lore of the multiverse, is the idea that there are 3 ways to survive. The first way is domination. And this is essentially the Weresylphs, the Logicios. And the second way is basically us, people. You know, we have good days, we have bad days. We sort of bumble around somewhere in between, you know. We have a chain of command, you know. There is someone above us, there is someone below us. Unless you're me, in which case you're basically at the bottom. And then there is the third way. And the third way is survival through being dominated. This is our pets. This is our cattle. This is, you know, slaves, you know, the way this is the people who are the people and the things that are kept alive because they are useful or in some other way exploitable and desirable, and so we will keep them alive even if they don't want to. Like, you know, like the fucking pandas. You know, I mean, yes, we did cut down their habitat, but like, their whole thing is that they are a species that can't be fucked to fuck. They are an entire species that is on the verge of extinction because they don't want to fuck each other. So we will put massive effort and energy and money into, we will make these pandas fuck. Which is fucking ridiculous. But there we go. You'd think we'd just say, sod it. Get the needles out, you know, do IVF. Extract some semen from panda testicles, extract eggs from the you know, ovaries of the pandas, and then, you know, mix them together in a petri dish and stick them in some pandas to get them pregnant. You know, you'd think we'd do something like that. Maybe we do, I don't know. But yeah, so detour into pandas being the fucking useless and most worthless species that probably deserve to go extinct, but fuck it, they're cute and cuddly, so we're not gonna let them. Which basically is their entire plan. Which basically is the entire plan of this great alien race, which is evil is coming, we can't stop it, we don't know how to stop it. So what we're gonna do, what these people do, is they create basically biological packaging. So that other people will say, hey, they're too cute, we can't let them die. And they create this thing, this essentially biological machine called an albino sylph squirrel. And the albino sylph squirrel is designed so that its different excretions will create different kind of concoctions to create different kind of effects on the people drinking or being injected with the stuff, so that their packaging will alter, and thus they can survive in different kinds of ways, because they want to ensure that their species will survive. So they want to be the best at everything. And sylphs are this. Sylphs are the best. That they are the best at everything that we keep alive for the sake of keeping alive, because we like them. They are the best slaves, the best lovers, the best pets, the best the best soldiers, the best tools and resources. You know, they the best cattle. They are perfect, and they send all their race off. You know, having all drunken, you know, the sort of various concoctions made by the albino sylph squirrel, and they launch themselves at a trading station, and the traders get hold of them. They get hold of this ship, and they're like, "Well, look at this stuff. It's all fucking aliens. We can't do anything with that." What's that? Albino sylph squirrel. And these traders start doing experimentations on the concoctions, because they're wheeler deal types, you know. They're like, and they sort of find the logs of, you know, what has happened, and it's like, and they don't really care. But they go, oh, well, this turns things into the perfect things. And so they start experimenting on their stuff, on their guests, and sort of going, nah. What about this? Hey, you tall, green, gangly fella, let's try you. No, that's not working. That's not working. And then one day, a human female comes along, and they go, okay, try this. Hey, that works. You know. And so that's why the sylph is typically regarded as a human female, because essentially it's capitalism in action. In the sense that they set these people, this great empire sends off their last great hope for survival, and the traders go, fuck your dying race. We're gonna take your machine for creating essentially species packaging. We're going to experiment upon our customers, and the one that sells the best, that's the one we're going to keep doing. And that's the one that gets popularised. And that's the one that the Far Chinook hears about. And I do mean the Far Chinook, because the Far Chinook has experience of sylphs long before the trial that gets him reincarnated. And so when the great Far Chinook is founding the Logicios, he has remembered the sylphs. He has remembered that he likes them, and so he will essentially go out of his way to find sylphs, look after them, care for them, get more sylphs, because he loves sylphs, because sylphs are essentially the perfection of what he loved about Lucy, his, you know, the woman whose soul is quite literally tied to his, and who is tied to his very identity as a being. And so the Far Chinook essentially sets down in his tenets that sylphs are important for the Lodicio Empire. And then the great Far Chinook goes off to have a great many adventures, and the Lodicios kind of stagnate, because it's sort of like how, you know, the founding fathers, when they created America, once upon a time, it all made sense. It all made fucking sense. Everything was there for a reason and a purpose. And yeah, okay, some of them were a bit dodgy, you know, some of them were slavers. But a lot of the sort of, you know, things in the Constitution were well thought out. Even, you know, the bit that I mostly don't like, which is the whole right to bear arms. That made sense at the time because they were a large country and Britain had kept fucking sending armies after them, and they needed a way to defend their army without becoming the very fascism that they had essentially staged a revolution against. They didn't want to sort of levy taxes in order to, you know, in order to found an army, because apart from anything else, they were already in the debt, and it would have been a bad idea. So it made sense at the time to say, hey, you've got the right to do this, and then, you know, centuries pass, and, you know, things get exaggerated, misinterpreted, and suddenly you've got the NRA saying, hey, shall not be infringed! And it's like, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god. And that's basically what happened with the Sylphs and the Logicios. Because the Logicios were created to be essentially the watchers, the guardians of the multiverse, who would make sure that nothing bad happened. That, you know, they would keep track of the Weresharks. They would, you know, travel from universe to universe fighting evil and making sure that nothing bad was going to threaten to destroy the multiverse. And in general, that's what they did. And in general, they went about this in a very good manner. And, you know, they would take sylphs as their pets, because essentially Logicios are near immortal beings. So they're going to take, if they're gonna have lovers, they're gonna have lovers who are immortal. And, you know, going through all the Logicio training is a heck of a thing. And basically, if they did, then it's like, hey, you've completed all the Logicio training. Now you can go and essentially go off on your own adventures and never see your loved one ever again, because it's a great grand multiverse, and pretty much any time you spend time in the in a single universe, there are going to be billions of duplicates of you, and you've just kind of got to accept that as kind of a fact of the job, right? Like, if you are someone who travels between universes, there are going to be many copies of you out there, because, I mean, it's a fact of life if you are within the multiverse anyway. But so long as you spend your entire life within one universe, you don't have to think about that. You can think that you're a special, precious little snowflake, and that you are individual and unique, because you don't have to travel the multiverse and risk bumping into the you that turned left down that road instead of right. But if you're a member of the Logicio, you have to accept that, and so yeah. The only way that you can really stay with someone is if you have a sylph. And something that should be stated about the sylphs is that essentially sylphs imprint on the first person they see once they have been given the sort of sylph pill or injection or what have you. There is also, there are different variants of it, and there is in fact a sylph cure that essentially does a genetic reset to base human, with base human male and base human female. And this can, of course, be exploited, but that's a story for another day and another series of angsty fucking videos. And one of these sort of alterations, one of these variations of the sylph pill, is that there are what are known as thoroughbred sylphs, or no, the thoroughbred sylphs are literally sylphs that are like horses you can ride. But there are egg-laying sylphs, and essentially an egg-laying sylph is a sylph that shrinks. In that, as soon as the injection or pill or whatever, through whatever manner the sylph solution is given to the person, that they will essentially burn up so that 90% of their body goes away, and essentially their brain turns to that of a hamster to fit inside their newly shrunken skull, as they are rewritten to essentially be a tiny humanoid hamster that needs to be taken care of until it regrows to full size again. And the reason for this sort of mode of things is that, one, it strengthens the bond between carer and sylph, in the sense that the shrinking process will, unless you use a memory gun to save the memories before the shrinking happens, essentially the shrinking process burns away all the memories of a person. So all they are is the memories of being raised from this little hamster thing to a fully sized person. And it also then means that they can regrow their, as far as their, but biologically the idea is, in terms of survival, that the sylph then has the genetic copy, the genetic understanding of how to produce that shrunken version again. And thus it means that essentially an egg-laying sylph can, upon sufficient stimulation, produce a egg that will hatch out into a miniature copy of themselves, and the copy will then essentially, upon reaching physical maturity, i.e. being full size again, well, being as full size as the sort of the host or whatever, well, not the host, but the I suppose the mother, then upon that happening, the egg-laying sylph will remember all the memories of the up to the moment of being shrunk. We'll remember all the memories up to the moment of laying the egg. And so essentially, through this method, you can quite easily have a clone army. And this is basically what the Great Farshnuk later does. But first, I need to sort of explain what happens in the sort of the middle period, and about a man who is also quite important to the story of the multiverse. First, I must blow my nose. So, the Great Farshnuk was the founder of the Logicios. But then he pretty much went off into legend. So what were the Farshnooks who ventured out into the multiverse typically like? Well, there is one infamous example, William Dixon Wright. William Dixon Wright was the sort of the prototypical model of a Farshnook, in the sense that William Dixon Wright was bullied as a kid, grew up nerdy, grew up obsessed with the Professor Logisti TV series. Some strange reason, almost as though he remembered it from a past life. And the William Dixon Wright Farshnook, his story is that Farshnooks, upon their as I say, his story is kind of an example of how most Farsnook stories actually go. But basically, the Farsnook is obsessed with flesh, with the flesh of human women, particularly because of Lucy and because of Sylphs and because of all the horrible things the Farsnook did, for which she was tried and executed for. And essentially, William Dixon Wright, when he lost his virginity, he found himself overtaken by the soul of the Farsnook and essentially ate his sexual partner alive. And the following morning, he was basically straddling a skeleton with just the hands and feet and head remaining, as everything else had been chewed clean, had been swallowed and was no more. All that was left was bone, other than the head, the feet, and the hands. And William Dixon Wright was covered in blood, and basically from that point, he started to remember more and more about the Farsnook. He started to remember more and more about the Sylphs, and he started to freak the fuck out about who he was, because he basically left this, and went on the run, sort of dumping the body and covering up the evidence as best he could. And then what seemed like an apparent act of feminist extremists happened, and they called him in, because the William Dixon Wright Farsnook had been writing all these stories anonymously online about his experiences, but he hadn't been very good at it. And essentially, when this incident happened, this apparent act of feminist terrorism happened, they'd searched for the only person who might know what the fuck was going on, and they found the William Dixon Wright Farsnook. And they offered him a full pardon if he would explain what the fuck was going on. Because essentially, what they witnessed was an apparent bunch of feminist terrorists making an attack on the Prime Minister's life, and one of them seeming to take a cyanide pill, and instead burning up alive, basically shrinking. and becoming this sylph, this shrunken sylph person, shrunken sylph hamster. And the William Dixon Wright Farshanu basically freaks completely the fuck out, because he's basically, grown up with an elder god sitting inside his head, and then on the moment of his greatest high has an utter eldritch terror overwhelm him, and he basically thinks that he is a monster, that he is a vampire that must keep feeding the beast inside, or it will overwhelm him and do something like that again. And that's kind of his approach with what happens, and with what he remembers. He freaks the fuck out and says, well, what you need to do is essentially create a conspiracy, make it legal to essentially legally distinguish sylphs as a separate species, so that we can kill and eat them, because if you don't, sylphs will outlast humanity, and because sylphs are inherently submissive, once they have outlasted humanity, humanity will then fall, because this immortal race won't fucking know what to do, there won't be anybody to look after them, and essentially humanity will die off. That's William Dixon Wright's insane fear. And it's also motivated to a certain extent by the idea of, okay, if he's got a pardon and he's not going to die, he wants to know that there is no way that anyone will have to endure the pain and torment that he inflicted upon his one and only sexual partner. And so for him, as far as he's concerned, sylphs being preyed upon, essentially what happens is a true patriarchal dystopia, where women are basically raised to be slaughtered, or if they're lucky, kept as pets and sex slaves. Because if they don't, what happens is that instead people just eat them, because sylphs are not human, and their DNA is that they are designed to be the best everything, including the best cattle. And so the William Dixon Wright Farshanu, basically insane, honestly believes, as far as he is concerned, that it is more moral to find and slaughter to find a woman, turn them into a sylph, and slaughter them, than it would be to let this monstrous power that he has inside of him, because he doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand it at all, because he hasn't realised he is the Farshanu. He just knows enough to know that he's fucking scared and terrified. And then, whilst he's sort of trying to deal with this stuff, the sylphs turn up. And many years later, there is essentially a plot by the sylphs to bring about the end of the conspiracy, and the William Dixon Wright Farshanu happens to stumble upon it, crossing paths with that universe's Lucy Dance, who is essentially protector of the man that the resistance is raising to overthrow the conspiracy, because obviously in a patriarchal dystopia where women are quite literally raised to be eaten, kept as pets, or worse, there's no way that a woman's going to be leading the grand revolution. because essentially the men wouldn't take them seriously because, hey, we can fucking eat you. So they're sort of Lucy is sort of the bodyguard, manipulating Jeff, because Jeff is the grand, savior, the messiah who will lead them out of the darkness by being the one good man who does not know about this conspiracy and just sees women as equals. So that he can then go, oh, holy shit, something is dreadfully wrong, we need to put this right, and, bring about an end to this. And that is basically what happens. But along the way, the Farshanook essentially become the William Dixon Wright Farshanook, realizes who he is, becomes moral, and becomes a Weresylph, learns about the Logicios having essentially a final way out, so that they can essentially undergo complete cellular renewal, and the Farshanook, the William Dixon Wright Farshanook, also then he encounters the Septagonoids. When they aren't such a persistent threat. And he also, takes Lucy as his pet. And the Septagonoids are basically the beings of pure logic who recognize that the entire way the nothingness is infinite and eternal green makes absolutely no sense. And because they are pure logic, they can't handle it. They essentially are the ultimate pedants who are almost who are almost fascistic in their need to solve the problem, but it doesn't make any sense. We've got to make it make sense, even though it will mean the deaths of everyone in the entirety of reality. They don't care. They are obsessed with finding the final solution to the ultimate problem and ending all reality and making nothingness just nothing by logical definition. And the Farshanook ends up destroying them. The William Dixon Wright Farshanook ends up destroying them, but in the process of which, as far as he is aware, Lucy sacrifices herself to make him stop them. Because basically, any logical being who touches pure logic will be corrupted by the pure logic and want to destroy the multiverse. Except the thing about the Farshanook is that the Farshanook has the host of someone born in a logical world who thinks logically and can thus be corrupted, but at the same time the Farshanook has the knowledge of how logic works and so can perfect a logic bomb to truly wipe out all the multiverse. And so essentially William Dixon Wright is already about to destroy the entirety of the multiverse when Lucy essentially tricks the Septagonoids into threatening to kill her unless he does exactly what he is doing, and in terms of destroying the multiverse. And Thus, William Dixon Wright, in a petulant fury, says, "Well, fine, fuck you guys. I'm gonna destroy you guys and save the multiverse just to spite you." And he does so, and then the Seghat, the Seghat is a septagonally systemic green nothingness habitational transcender. Basically a ship that can travel across the multiverse, disappear here, reappear there, sort of thing. Gets out in time, and then he sort of arrives back on Earth just in time to finally, essentially, tear down the conspiracy and reveal and sort of die as the scapegoat for the conspiracy. When it and sort of dies as the sort of scapegoat for the conspiracy, as the only one behind it, and everyone is innocent. But essentially, he then realizes, oh shit, because in destroying the septagonoids, the Farshnuk, the William Dixon Wright Farshnuk, as far as he is concerned, has condemned Lucy to death. He has killed his Lucy. And thus, when Jeff stabs him as part of the whole, I mean, it's part of the whole plan that Jeff stabs William Dixon Wright and apparently kills him. But basically, when William admits, I just killed Lucy. Shit. Jeff genuinely kills him. Genuinely, like, the Farshnuk would be dead then, were it not for the fact that essentially the host, William Dixon Wright, takes the damage upon him and the host dies, but not the soul of the Farshnuk. And because essentially the Farshnuk is within a Weresylph body, the William Dixon Wright soul can take the damage onto himself, and then the Farshnuk soul can step over, can take full control, and keep the Weresylph body going long enough until it heals. And then, and that's kind of basically what happens. And there is also this idea that at some point, the Farshnuk, all Farshnuk's, will become the Unleasher. And the Unleasher is essentially what happens when the Farshnuk is forced to undergo complete cellular renewal and becomes a woman. And typically what happens, I mean, it's a bit timey-wimey, but basically what happens is that the Farshnuk becomes a woman and then travels into the past so that the Farshnuk, so that William Dixon Wright can then trade the Unleasher to the Bam Kirsch in order to end the feud that they are about to begin. And so essentially the Farshnuk becomes the Unleasher, and then the Unleasher becomes essentially the pet sylph of the Bam Kirsch, and that's sort of how things end off with most Farshnuks, typically. So that's sort of the New God era. And then we enter into sort of the end game of the New God era. Okay. So yeah. Have another break, another drink, and we will go into the next part of the arc. Okay. So for many years, things happen merrily enough with occasional septagonoids causing a bit of a problem, but basically being easily curb stomped by various logicios or passing flash nukes, and flash nukes. It's a very sort of laissez-faire period. But then the septagonoids start. Essentially, the more septagonoids there are, the more septagonoids there can be, and there essentially become more and more incidents of septagonoid issues until essentially the logicios and the septagonoids are at a state of constant war. Because and essentially, if the septagonoids only have to win once, and that's it, all of reality is gone, right? Like, they can win a battle, but if they ever get a working reality bomb, that's it. All of reality is gone. So the logicios kind of, partly because of necessity, stop being this sort of laissez-faire state of, merry wanderers traveling the multiverse, and become a bunch of militaristic, desperate knight errant fighters. Well, I suppose knight errant isn't the way to say it, because they are following the grand code, but essentially they don't give a shit anymore. The logicios are fighting constant war, and they are freaking out because essentially the way the logicios are recruited generally is that there will be an individual who will meet a logicio, or will stumble upon them, or will find a Fushnik, or something or other. There will be a unique individual that fortune will shine upon them, and they will be chosen, and they will stumble across the logicios through some path or another, and then they will be taught and trained, and centuries of training, potentially thousands of years of training, before finally it's like, okay, serve your time on the front lines. And this is okay to a certain extent when the septagonoids are few and far between, and when you've got a big enough multiverse and you've got enough fast nukes that things aren't so much of an issue. But at a certain point, the septagonoids start realizing that at a certain point, the septagonoids stop being so focused on creating the bomb that they realize they stop focusing on the end game itself and start focusing on achieving the end game. Because the septagonoids are obsessed with solving the fact that nothing should be nothing. The whole of reality, the whole of the multiverse should not exist. They're obsessed with that. And that's their key weakness, is that they keep trying to just create the perfect bomb to end everything, and that is all they need to do. But because of that takes a lot of time and resources, and they have to focus on getting the materials and the supplies, and they have to spend a lot of time working on this stuff together to think through this shit, and how do we do this, and they're limited by the fact they're logical, and so there's a lot of time in which they can be blown up. And then they start realizing, hey, it only takes one of us to make the bomb. It only takes one bomb and we've won. So they start amassing their numbers. They start thinking tactically about how they actually win this. But essentially before they were just terrorists going, okay, we just need to do this one thing and it'll be okay. But now they're actually thinking, okay, how do we achieve this goal? And so they're getting competent, and they're building an army, and they are getting huge. They're sort of fortifying defenses, and essentially the Logicios reach a point where they've been at this for so long that they don't think they're going to be able to keep fighting this forever. And this is partly why they become such bastards. It's because it used to be that you could travel the entirety of the multiverse and find the one girl who would be utterly perfect for you and would genuinely want to come with you, but if you know that you've got to go to the front lines tomorrow and there's this, a 70, 80, 90% mortality rate, you're not gonna give so much of the shit, and you're just gonna say, fuck it, you will do, you're coming with me. And the Logicios have essentially the technology to make them consent. And it's rather like the it's rather like the Bam Kirsch, in the sense that the Bam Kirsch sort of starts off around about a similar time, where she, being really the toy maker she is, around about this time, whereby she needs her toys to consent, but that doesn't mean they are consenting. They are utterly being coerced. It is entirely against their will, but they think they've consented, because it's that kind of situation whereby to an outsider what's going on is clearly just horribly abusive. But as far as they are concerned within it, they can be made to consent and go along with everything the Logicios are doing, or the Bam Kirsch is doing. And so the Logicios are getting desperate. They're getting desperate because they can see an end. They can see an end coming. They are, because the Logicios have an empire. This is how they train their troops. This is how, they patrol the whole multiverse. And it's almost like the front lines of the Great Septagonoid War are just a small part of their operations, but they're becoming a larger and larger part of it. And they're thinking about the wider war effort, and they're thinking, okay, we need to start thinking of alternative ways to fight this war. We need more people. We need more soldiers more quickly. And so essentially, what they decide to do is to ring fence a bunch of universes and invade them, colonize them, and make them into essentially vassal states that will provide troops for the war effort. That's essentially what they decide to do. And there's kind of, there's internal, intrigue and manipulation, and, to a certain extent there are signs that, maybe the female Logicios and the sylphs within the Logicio Empire deliberately chose it to go down in this way, knowing how people would react. Because the whole entire reason the Logicios are doing this is because they are worried about losing. They are worried that the multiverse will end if they lose this war, and they need troops and supplies, and they can't afford to fuck around anymore. And of course, the thing about humanity, the thing about people in general, sapient species in general, is that if you land your empire down upon their shores like fucking jackboots, they're gonna fight back. They're gonna fucking fight back. And this is where essentially Lucy Dance enters the story. Because and a lot of this is actually told in a lot of this era of the founding of the of what becomes known as the United Civilizations of the Multiverse. A lot of this story of how this comes about is told in the Podquisition fanfic Laura Queen of Mirth, but hey, all that matters is, the one element of the genetic reset that somebody misinterpreted. But essentially what happens is that Lucille Dance is someone who essentially has been. It's a Battlestar Galactica situation whereby there are these beings known as the Plasticlones who come from another universe, and they are basically plastic metal robot copies of people, and they have been fighting this war, this perpetual war with the human race of this alternative universe, which Lucy is a part of, and they have been chasing this human species, forcing them to evolve and upgrade and become spacefaring and develop amazing weapons and technology, and never quite killing them, never delivering the killing blow, but always scaring the almighty fuck out of them so that they get harder, they get tougher, they upgrade their technology, they build resources, they build a grand colony across the solar system, across the grand expanses of space, and forever being chased by the Plasticlones. And Lucy has had to kill multiple copies, and she's grown up in this society that is very militaristic and very strong and very tough, and she knows how to survive. She's been trained how to survive, how to fight, and essentially it's revealed to be part of a plot by the Great Flushing, because one of the Plasticlones is a Plasticlone of William Dixon Wright, a Plasticlone of him, and that Farshnook. And essentially, the William Dixon Wright Plasticlone, he's basically agrees to sort of call off a ceasefire with the human race, and to help with the human race take back the world from the Logicios, because they need to work together to fight off the Logicios. And they in fact, because the William Dixon Wright Plasticlone is a Plasticlone of a Farshnook, he knows how to travel the multiverse, and essentially his Plasticlones will help essentially her her humanity, the sort of grand space empire that she is a part of, retake the Earth from the Logicios. But they need Lucy to go ahead and inspire the revolution. And so Lucy is essentially sent off trekking across 100 million universes, inspiring revolution on 100 million universes. And of course this is revealed as, hey, we will cooperate because we have our mutual enemy who are the Logicios, and we must work together. But really all of this is about the Farshnook the great Farshnook playing a very long game, and the Farshnook in general playing a very long game of creating the exact set of circumstances that will create the united civilizations of the multiverse and will create this particular version of Lucy Dance. A version of Lucy Dance that is a trained, competent, experienced fighter who knows how to survive, who is tough, pragmatic, and also someone who's still Lucy, who's still got that kindness, compassion. And then, after having having walked the 100 million universes, having fought off the Logicios, because essentially her great space empire rolls back in with the plasticlones in tow, and they beat the almighty fuck out of the Logicios. And at the same time, as this is going on, Lucy is inspiring revolution in all these other universes, universes where there are where things are so very, very different. And the important thing, in a straight up fight, they can't really, nobody here can really defeat the Logicios. If it was just them against the Logicios, they couldn't win. But the Logicios did this because they can't fight anymore. They don't want to fight anymore. They can't afford to fight anymore. They just need troops and resources. And so, essentially, they thought they were going to go over there and they were going to curb stomp them. And instead, there is a resistance. And they're like, fuck. And essentially, they very quickly agree a peace. And essentially the Logicios recognize the newly created united civilizations of the multiverse on the agreement that essentially the united civilizations of the multiverse still send them the troops, will send them the troops and the supplies and everything that they wanted to begin with. And of course they agree to this, the various people across grand civilization, the various people across the 100 million universes of the united civilizations of the multiverse agree to this because they were about to be curb stomped by basically godmen, by demigods. And so they agree, and as a result of this, essentially they have a trading of technology across the 100 million universes. And so with the united civilizations of the multiverse, what you have is this kind of militaristic, post-scarcity, capitalistic society in which everybody has a role, everybody has a part to play in society, everybody has a job. And because essentially their whole function is to provide troops and resources to the war effort. And they are, and they will all be looked after, but they also have capitalism in the sense that, you know, they still buy food, they still, you know, they can all survive, but there are still things that can be bought. You know, you can buy your own ships, you can buy new guns, because they need the upgrading sort of system in place that capitalism gives. And at the same time, they have this because it's the only way to sort of have to incorporate the different elements of the different societies, because they can't just go straight from, you know, their own, you know, like 20th century level societies to suddenly, hey, you know, robots and things. So sort of there is still, whilst they can all get the food they need to eat easily enough, if they want to buy luxury goods, they need money, they need to work, they need to do stuff like that. And essentially, it is within the United Civilizations of the Multiverse that we get into the sort of sylphs as pets that can be bought, and the idea of the Bamkersh's toys as things that can be bought. And, you know, people can volunteer to, they can essentially go to a pet center and sign up to be a pet, right? Like, if you don't want to, if you don't particularly fancy, you know, signing up to be part of the Logisio Empire, or to be, if you don't fancy, you know, signing up to be part of the Logisio war fleet to fight in United Civilizations of the Multiverse, if you don't fancy to be part of to be a cog in the great machine, you can just be a pet, because this is the kind of world where there are Logisios, and, you know, even if there isn't Logisios, there are shared culture. There's a cultural sharing going on, because essentially part of the deal is Logisios are like, we need sylphs. End of. If we take people, we can have them. And so kind of part of the sort of deal is that, yes, you can't have a go at the Logisios if they take them, but it would be preferred if they did legitimately purchase them from people who had volunteered. And it is a thing that people choose, and like the people who run the sort of, you know, the pet centers for sylphs actually take care to ensure that they, you know, reform their specimens so that they are suitable pets. And indeed, there is a kind of short story that I wrote called Weresylph about a man who ends up sort of signing up to be essentially his. The idea is that the United Civilizations of the Multiverse is forever expanding. It is forever expanding and bringing in more people, welcoming new universes into the fold, new universes into the laws of the multiverse and of the United Civilizations of the Multiverse, and that once within this multiverse, once within the United Civilizations of the multiverse, there is this idea of cultural exchange, and so this, because the United Civilizations of the multiverse is essentially going to manage itself as the ever-growing ally to the Logicios, so that the Logicios can focus on fighting the war, whilst the United Civilizations of the multiverse focus on providing them with more troops, more supplies, and stuff like that. And so one of these people, their universe becomes incorporated into the United Civilizations, and they basically get talked into and sort of succumb to the idea that being a sylph is a good idea. So that's just, I'm not sure if I've published that story anywhere where people would know about it, but that's definitely a story that I've written and is on my computer, and that's a thing that happens. And essentially, Lucy Dance, that isn't the only sort of helping to sort of lead the revolution that founds the United Civilizations of the multiverse isn't the only thing that's special about Lucy Dance, because she also she is someone who is turned into an egg-laying sylph by the Great Varshnuk. And then she is essentially raised as Jahfaxi Kulamansi's pet, otherwise known as Kate. Jahfaxi Kulamansi on that ship. And basically, she is the second in command of the ship Paragon Rising, or the ship Paragon of Virtue, and she is the person who will meet with new races, who will be an ambassador to the species, who will welcome them into the fold of the United Civilizations, and then basically at a certain point, she finds the Great Varshnuk and finally finds out the truth from him, that it was all a lie and manipulation to create her, to create the perfect warrior who would have the mind and soul of the Varshnuk, but who could also survive so many things and could be essentially infinitely reproduced, because the problem with the multiverse, having the multiverse as the sort of the battlefield, is that it's such a huge scale. Like, yes, they have got, a multiversal internet to a certain extent, but still keeping track of that, making sure that everything's going on, you're gonna have a hard time ruling that, and fighting a battle on every front, unless you can literally be on every single battlefield. And because Lucy is an egg-laying sylph, that's what she can be. And the Varshnuk, the Great Varshnuk, declares her essentially his heir, passes on his soul, essentially reuniting the two souls within her, and thus she becomes the Unleasher. She becomes basically the most powerful Varshnuk, and certainly the most powerful Lucy, and she essentially sends copies of her. She becomes leader of the fight back. She becomes leader of the United Civilizations of the Multiverse, basically de facto queen of the United Civilizations of the Multiverse, at least on a military front, against the Septagonoids, but also against the Logicios, because she's also plotting a Cold War against the Logicios. Like, I mean, a frequent thing that she will do is like give copies of herself off to other people to be pets. It's sort of, like, hey, welcome to the Empire. Have a copy of me as a pet, sort of thing. And the idea is then that she also knows that there is a her in every single important ruler, in every single important ruling party or nation or whatever within the United Civilizations of the Multiverse. It's the only way to oversee this sort of thing, is to ensure that she is literally everywhere, basically. And so the United Civilizations of the Multiverse become this great force for fight back and change. And here, the Bamkirsch enters the picture as the toy maker and basically talks Lucy into making it legal for the toy maker to sell people as toys once they have gone through this, once they have been remade as toys, as far as the Bamkirsch is concerned. And she does so basically on the promise that she will then be Lucy's Napoleon, going out spreading the United Civilizations of the Multiverse to all these different universes, because essentially Lucy is focusing on fighting the enemy. She's focusing on the war effort and, well, being leading every single element of the war effort. So she can't be the person particularly conquering universes. She can't do that. She can, in the sense that she can produce a copy of herself, but she's much more someone who has to think about the war. She can't do it as well as the Bamkirsch, because the Bamkirsch is a natural born manipulator, whereas Lucy is created for this one very specific task. She is created because she can be everywhere. She can orchestrate this one very specific task. And that very specific task is a lot different from conquering a universe. Her task is fighting the war and ensuring that everybody is okay, sending their children to fight and die in this war. And it's also here that we get the Corichthy. We get basically other different forms of life other than human, or robots made in the image of human, or the Weresylphs, because it's here that we get the Corichthy, for example. The Corichthy are basically sentient great white sharks, and sentient sharks in general, sapient sharks, that have, thanks to the Oblotnik, who are sapient sort of octopuses, been given cybernetic humanoid prosthetics so that they can participate in humanoid society. Like so they'll have like a breaching pool where they sort of swim around most of the time, and then they can breach out of it, and land in a contraption that catches them and essentially clamps on prosthetic legs around their sort of pectoral things, the smaller pectoral things, and then prosthetic arms around their actual pectoral things, and allow them and a sort of essentially the equivalent of scuba gear for sharks, so that they can survive out of water with a sort of cybernetic, with a sort of electronic translator module, so that they can function in society. And essentially, the Corichthy are great brutes because they're sharks. Sharks are not touchy-feely creatures. Sharks are creatures that, when they have sex, they have to literally bite onto each other to hold the fuck on. So they are quite forceful things, quite tough things, particularly also as a result of their cybernetic prosthetics. There's cyborg aspects, and then there are the arachnoforms. The arachnoforms are basically spiders the size of cars that are fully sentient and fully sapient, and thinking creatures, thinking people with their own complex, society, and they are predators. The first moment when they meet Lucy and and Lucy's best friend Greta, the Corichthy, the first thing they do basically is wrap them up in drug them, and then they wrap them up in their cobwebs and hang them above their pit of baby spiders so that the baby spiders can eat them alive. That's basically what they do. That's basically their society. They are a very predatory society with very they're a very predatory society, and very cold and manipulative and cunning and very useful allies. And then there are the there is basically a dinosaur, a dinosaur civilization, I suppose is the best term. Yes, they're called the Humanilacetae, and they are basically there's a whole big thing going on that for centuries, for thousands of years, basically they a whole, several hundred different species of sentient, sapient dinosaurs have been living relatively peacefully with one another, except for the fact that obviously the carnivorous dinosaurs need to live on the herbivorous dinosaurs. And obviously, with sort of that grown meat, this can be put an end to, but there is this very odd, almost feudal aspect to their society whereby the herbivores will basically, bow down before the carnivores and let them eat them, because that's the way it's always been, and because it's better to go willingly than to have a hungry carnivore decide that it wants your children as well. And there are other species that help, but those are kind of the big three. There are also the Controvoxi. The Controvoxi are essentially tentacled aliens that are, I mean, I created these as the kind of, I created the Contravoxi to be invading aliens. Okay. The Contravoxi have 8 hairy legs like a spider. They are basically a gigantic column of tentacles fit with a ring of eyes that are 5 deep. And then atop that ring is just a vast mouth filled with serrated teeth. And within the stomach is just a load of stomach acid and a thing, something that looks like a bat-like creature, but it's attached to the Contravoxi, and it will rise up out of the Contravoxi's mouth and start flapping its wings to allow the Contravoxi to fly. And once it is above you, you can then see that, oh yeah, beneath the Contravoxi, within its anus, it has another mouth and another set of serrated teeth, so that it can land upon you arse first and eat you alive through the arse. And they also have the ability to essentially squirt out liquids through their tentacle suckers, so they can, for example, drink a whole lot of, pure alcohol and set fire to things through their tentacles. The Contravoxi are very smart. They're very hard to kill because essentially all their organs are replicated many times around their body, and if you destroy one thing, the rest can keep going more or less. So very hard to kill, and good luck getting through the many tentacles. And the Contravoxi have essentially a great spacefaring empire that can jump from universe to universe, and they have within them, they have as part of them as part of their setup, a sort of subspecies, sort of second-class citizenry that are essentially humanoids called Vliguri, who were uplifted from a sort of medieval age, given essentially post-scarcity, latest in the very best medical help. But oh, by the way, between the ages of 25 and 35, if the Contravoxi want to eat the Vliguri, they gonna. Or at least that's the way it is for a long time. They will go around just raiding worlds with humanoid species and just razing them to the ground, killing everyone. Killing everyone who puts up a fight, and eating the children, and generally putting people into harvest pens where they can then be fed to the Grand Court. But as part of the Contravoxi Survivor, a revolution happens whereby basically, thanks to a couple of Weresylph sylphs that were given to the Grand Emperor of the Contravoxi, someone manages to form a revolution and get hold of an albino sylph scroll, so that essentially all the Vliguris and the humans can become Weresylph sylphs. Because if you're a Weresylph sylph, then you've got the healing abilities of a Wereshark, but you also have the submissiveness of a sylph, which can counteract against the aggressive nature of the Wereshark, can sort of give you your sanity back, but it also means that you are a pet, and it also means that sylphs like pain. So essentially, a revolution happens through the through essentially these Wereshark sylphs liking the pain, being able to survive having essentially their arms and legs and most of their organs removed and eaten, so they can survive that, fully regrow their limbs within a day, and they like it. And so that forms a revolution, because now suddenly all the poor Contravoxi who aren't subject to the grand feasts and aren't allowed to have and who are essentially are forced to have capitalism as a means of motivating them to work harder, when the Vliguri get to eat whatever the hell they like, because they are the food for the elite. Essentially, thanks to the Vliguri and the humans being able to be Weresylph sylphs and being able to essentially be food that wants to be eaten and can be eaten again and again and again, all the poor Contravoxi can now survive and can now actually pose a threat to the government, and therefore they essentially stage a revolution and a riot and manage to bring about a parliamentary democracy, which still needs work, but there are, for example, now rights for Vliguri and humans who are within the civilization, so that they can choose whether they want to. First of all, they can actually say no to being eaten alive, and if they do say yes, they can opt for becoming a Weresylph sylph. And so there are sort of like now two different versions of the Contravoxi. There are the Contravoxi who basically are Vikings, basically space Vikings, sort of traveling between universes, just devouring people and putting them into slave pits, and keeping them as second-class citizenry. Or there is the sort of post-revolutionary Contravoxi who are much more kind and lenient and actually are on good terms with United Civilizations of the Multiverse. And indeed, as part of this change, essentially the Bamkirch institutes an offshoot based on the toy brand of individuals that are essentially the same people, but as Weresylph sylphs with an off button, and that is itself a mercy, because essentially the idea is that before, the Weresylph sylphs might enjoy being eaten alive, but then they've kind of got to sit around waiting for 8 hours or whatever for their limbs to regrow, and that's not a pleasant experience, because it's boring as fuck. So essentially the what the Bamkush does is essentially find the sort of the women, the sylphs who enjoyed it, the Weresylph sylphs who enjoyed it the most and who were enjoyed the most, and institutes this sort of rewrites their genetic code so their consciousnesses can be turned off, and then sort of sells them on, well, copies them at an exact logicular level through a process which is known as logicular replication, and essentially 3D prints out copies of these Weresylph sylphs, and then these Weresylph sylphs who can be sent off to, can be bought by Contravoxi, or indeed cannibalistic people, and used because the idea is that then they can be, that you can buy them knowing that they are, that as far as they're concerned, they have indeed consented to being eaten alive, and that they will like it, and you can then turn them off to spare them the boredom of having to wait for their limbs to regrow, which is kind of a mercy, to be honest. And that's kind of, yeah, that's where that is up to the point of the ending of the multiverse. Well, not the ending of the multiverse, but the ending of the sort of the first arc. So yeah, I'm gonna just go get some more squash, and then I think we are gonna discuss kind of the very, oh no, we've got to do the Architects of Chaos first. Okay, once we've done the Architects of Chaos, then we're going to discuss the sort of how this all ends, and essentially where we are at the start of Arc 2. Okay, so I'll see you later. Well, see you in a jump cut. Okay. Okay. So the Architects of Chaos, they are a part that should not be ignored in the coming conflict, because the Architects of Chaos are basically the organisation that Jahanic Coolemancy is really involved with. I mean, Jahanic Coolemancy obviously is overseeing it, well, is overseeing Lucy, Paragon of Virtue, but Jahanic Coolemancy basically created the Architects of Chaos, and the Architects of Chaos are they are anarcho-communists, basically. But they're very distinctly people who don't give a shit. And they are people who are united by the fact that they are each individuals who, for various different reasons, want to make a difference in their own unique ways. I mean, essentially, the Architects of Chaos is the comic book superhero part of the multiverse. So, thus, it's not really fleshed out, but essentially, the idea is that here you will get people who, you know, were drank a special formula and now they've got superpowers, or gods granted gifts upon them, and stuff like that. And so now they're going out into the multiverse to, fight, to help fight wrong and injustice, and they also are helping to fight this war against the set timelines. It's known as, the Forever War, or the Great War. I should also mention, if I haven't before, there are dragons in the multiverse. I mean, of course, it shouldn't be that surprising because, the whole key stream idea, there are gods, there are heavens and hells within universes. But also in a sense that the Farshanuk created dragons. The Farshanuk had dragons to begin with, and he gets dragons back. He can create dragons. Indeed, it's kind of a plot point within the grand and huge and hated Laura K. Buzz fanfic that I wrote that is quasi-canonical, that they can create dragons, and that's how they help fight back against the Odysseus. It's not a big part, but just the fact that they can basically turn people into dragons is kind of a thing. And also a story that I really need to finish off at some point. But yeah, that's a thing that can happen. So anyway, the war happens, the Great War, and I'm gonna summarize because basically the whole point. Oh yeah, and also there are the Valkyries. The Valkyries are basically the people who rescue the injured soldiers from the battle, from the front lines, and give them a second chance at life, and let them live a new life and basically reward them. The Valkyries are the people who will swoop down and save people on the brink of death and let them have a nice, happy, peaceful time of it, because essentially, as far as they're concerned, they need to preserve the experienced soldiers. That's simply it, and that experience is going to be essential in the coming war, as far as they're concerned. In this meat grinder affair, you need to preserve the experience. If it's possible to save even one person from an attack that wipes out almost everyone, save that one person, give them a new chance, let them recover, let them heal, let them get over the trauma. And obviously, because essentially so many people fighting in the Great War are Odysseus, that means they go out and they find sylphs for them, and indeed, one of the stories of the Valkyrie is a story about essentially a guy who gets matched up with someone who was fighting for the Odysseus against the Septechnoids. And there are whole other aspects to it, like there is a section of the multiverse that is essentially cordoned off to act as an arc to preserve the establishment, sort of the elite of society, to protect the world once the war is over. Because there is a sense that at some point the war is going to end and the world will be radically different. And so there is this sort of arc that is created. This is a sort of sectioned off part that is is not part of the multiverse. Like, the war does not extend here. You know, it's you know, he's literally like organized peace treaties with the Septagnoids and said, hey, you stay the fuck away from here, because at some point it's gonna be over one way or the other, and if it's over in the sense of you guys are all defeated, then that means I would like my society kept nice and safe. And this guy manages to organise it because he is a liquidator, which means that basically he can control every subatomic particle of his being, so that he can change between the four different states of matter: liquid, solid, gas, and plasma. And so, yeah, that's a sort of thing that happens. That's an element of it, and there's also the Pan Multiverse Good Time Association, which essentially is the equivalent of the culture. They're a load of allied universes that just want to have a good time, and you can play your role, and you know, you can like play in vampire games and stuff like that, but it doesn't fundamentally matter. So then the war happens, and a lot of people die in the war. A lot of people die in the war because, the other thing you must understand is that basically the United Civilizations of the Multiverse and the Logisio Empire effectively swallow a lot of the multiverse. Like, they can't swallow everything because of the way the multiverse works. At least half of the multiverse will remain untainted, but they swallow a lot of it. Like, noticeably, like, if you pan back with the biggest wide-angle camera in the world, you would be able to see just how fast these things have taken up. And the reason they have done this is because the war is getting more and more and more desperate. And like, Farsh are being brought out of hiding, because essentially the Logicios brought William Dixon. Essentially, they orchestrated everything so that William Dixon Wright would realise he was the Farsh, would gain morality, and that they could use him. Essentially, that's what the Logicios do and did before the Great War. The Logicios managed Farsh. They were created by the Farsh, and they find Farsh. They make them realise who they are. They make them realise their potential. They make them fucking moral, and they use them to preserve the multiverse. And as the war gets tougher, the Farsh throw everything. The Farsh and the Logicios throw everything they can. And as the war goes on, as the sides get tougher and tougher and tougher, the Farsh start to get more powerful. They start to have more of a general awareness of each other. There is this sense that the Farsh soul is one soul across the entirety of the multiverse, and it's starting to pull itself together. And so it's one soul with all these different host bodies and host minds. And the Farsh is orchestrating this fight back. And of course, the Farsh is also within Lucy Dance. Both literally in the sense that Lucy Dance's paragon, the paragon of virtue, is orchestrating the entire war and is heir to the Farsh, but also in the sense that Lucy Dance's soul is twinned with his. And so, as his power grows, so hers does, and essentially what happens is that the Farshnooks and Lucys and the Bamkirshes and Legisios and the United Civilizations of the Multiverse all perform one final push, and they essentially create a bomb for reality that will make it so that essentially the souls of the Farshnook and of Lucy are tied to the Septagonoids. They essentially make the existence of the Farshnook and therefore Lucy tied to the Septagonoids, and they make it so that upon creation, so that upon realizing who the Farshnuk is, the Farshnuk will instantly be sent to this essentially fate worse than death, this shadow realm, where and he will be sent there with the Lucy of that universe and with any Septagonoids that are there alongside, and they will be drawn there and they will be trapped there, and they won't be able to do a damn thing because any attempts at building logic bombs or whatever won't work. And indeed, because the Septagonoids are effectively beings of pure logic, being transported there means they will be instantly killed. They basically rewrite reality to trap the Septagonoids in a point where they will be constantly killed. Constantly killed. And also, every time the Farshnuk dies, the Septagonoids are transported there as well. There is, however, one loophole that the Farshnuk included in this, because of course he did, which is that if the Farshnuk and Lucy happen to both die and then come back, well, they have broken the contract. Well, it's not they've broken the contract itself. They have fulfilled the terms of the contract, and now they are free from it. So the Septagonoids within their universe, the Septagonoids tied to them, are sent to this shadow realm, but these people who have been brought back from the dead are now able to continue along their lives. And so what is happening now with sort of Arc 2, as I'm sort of calling this, is that the new Great Farshnuk, that is the Farshnuk who was basically the Bamkirsh, or a Bamkirsh, watched all of this happen, was involved in all of this, and essentially was sent to create the first Farshnuk of this new era. You know, essentially this Bamkirsh is fresh off the final moments of the end of the Great War of the Septagonoids, and he knows about the Farshnuk's plan, to the Farshnuk's loophole, and he creates it by essentially using the logicular replication method to bring the Farshnuk and Lucy back from the dead. He kills them before they realise who they are, or just as they're about to, and then brings them back, and once the new great Farshanuk, once the new great Farshanuk realizes this situation, he decides that he is going to essentially, instead of looking outwards to the multiverse, to the problems in the multiverse, he is going to look inwards at the problems of bigotry and racism and generally capitalism and corruption. Because essentially one of the final acts of the Logicios was, one of the final acts of the Great War was the reformation of the Logicios. What was the sort of the massacring of the Logicios and the restructuring of them into a more into how they were supposed to be to begin with. And essentially with this, every single Lucy and every single Farshanuk is dead, apart from those who don't know that they are the Farshanuk and Lucy, and apart from this one who has been killed and brought back. And he essentially resolves to bring down the monsters within his own universe. And this is the start of Arc 2. So yeah, this is where we are now. This has been a very long episode. I apologise. Right. Well, anyway, apologies for the very, very long episode. Yeah. Let me know if you have any questions you want to ask about stuff that's gone on. Oh, a character that I should mention is that there is a character that is associated with the Bamkirch in the way that Lucy is associated with the Farshanuk, but it's not because her soul is tied with the Bamkirch. It is because essentially she happens to be the first woman who fits the Bamkirch's toy requirements, and also happens to be the first to say yes and fully all of the conditioning and programming and the entire process works on. And she is called Lisa Barbara La Watkins, and yeah, that's the story of the Toymaker that she's in. Oh, and of course, yes, how can I forget? Fuzzy Logic, the latest story that is published and out by me, is all about the creation of artificial intelligence, and the artificial intelligence is called Omega. And essentially this is just sentient AI that can simulate, that has a simulated brain, so it can understand what emotions are and what people are likely feeling in response to things. So it is an emotive AI that, but also at the same time, because it uses this as a guide, it can decide, you know what, a human would be feeling murderous rage right now, I'd rather not. Yeah, that's basically, yeah, it. Let me know if you've got any questions about this. I think I will include a link of a load of stories in the in the video description for you to a load of the best for you to have a read. A lot of them are very, very fucking weird, but there we go. Anyway, I will see you guys later. I have to go and have a shower. Bye bye. Thank you to all my Patreons at patreon.com for helping to make videos like this possible. If you wish to leave a like or dislike to rate the video for my analytics, that would be much appreciated. Comments are always welcome, though be aware that they will be moderated before being published, so please be civil. If you liked this video, please consider adding it to your favourites, sharing it to your friends, or subscribing. If you wish to help me out, or my channels, please consider whitelisting my videos in your adblock software, subscribing for monthly donations through Patreon, or giving a small one-off donation. Alternatively, I have a Steam wishlist for games I would consider let's playing or streaming, so if you would like to see me broken before the Dark Souls altar, or just happen to have gotten a duplicate of a game in a humble bundle, then you know what to do. I also have an official Facebook fan page, Twitter account, Tumblr, Reddit and blog, so you can stay up to date with all of my videos, blog articles and the things I care about. Links are in the video description. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I think that all that now needs to be said is ban all guns, institute universal basic income now, and ensure government is elected by proportional representation. Oh, and also, fuck the racists and fuck the alt-right.